Welcome to the Cognitive Rampage podcast, or I should say, welcome back to the Cognitive Rampage podcast. We are broadcasting live. Again, we are picking up part two. I'm not going to do a long lead in here because I know there's a lot of information still to come out. It is now Saturday, and we are going to lay down part two of this. We did about an hour and a half yesterday on Friday. That's me and Drew Peters. If you were listening or you're catching this as the first show, I would suggest that you go back and before you finish this one and listen to part one. But if you're so inclined and brave, then just stay with us. But anyway, Drew, welcome back, man. It's been an overnight. And what did you do? Did you gather anything, man? Or it was your birthday last night, man. So what did you get into?
Essentially, I finished up the interview with you, had some stuff at the office still, went and trained, and actually am working on finally getting up through finishing Sons of Anarchy. So I had a pretty low-key night. You can see my cat's with me today. Shout out to the cats out there in the world. It's going to probably be a pain in my butt, but hey, it's entertainment, right?
Yeah, I mean, that speaks to the commitment level in which you're doing, man. So it's your birthday last night. You're turning, what, 26 last night?
Yep. Yes, sir.
26, and you just stayed at home, laid low key. Now, Sons of Anarchy is a decent series. I finished that one a while ago, man. It's pretty good. What season are you on?
I've made my way all the way to the fifth. I actually haven't watched it so long. I forgot a lot of it, so I'm just starting from the beginning, from fresh. That's the problem. When I watch shows at home, usually I'm working on notes or something like that. I can't concentrate on the show and I forget everything. So I'm like committing to sitting down and watching it finally.
Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah, Tim Ferriss actually even suggests that when you're doing work at home to actually put on a movie that you know or a series that you know by heart sometimes, and to where you can just kind of tune it out. And every once in a while, let you look up, get out of your work for a second, and then, dive back into what you're doing.
Yes, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia seems to work best for that.
Oh, man, that's classic too, man. I love William Day, one of the creators of that show. He gave a speech that I quote a lot. I may have even used it in the book, man. Anyway, he talked about, sticking to what he thought was funny. And he had network offers that he turned down. And in this, it was a commencement speech. And what he said is, I just stay with what I want to do, because if I thought putting mittens on kittens was funny, that's what I was going to do. And he stuck with what he wanted to do. And obviously the show and some other successes followed,
Yeah, absolutely. You do what you love, and that's what he does every day.
Right. I mean, it's true. And that's what you do. I mean, we covered your story all into this, man. And we were leaving off. We closed out yesterday talking about some creatine, and you were talking about proprietary blends and how we closed those down. And, I did like to help people put that together, to summary form. The proprietary blend, you'll see it when you look on the back, right, of those ingredients, to where you'll see 6 or 7 different ingredients all summed up to 1 calorie total number, right?
Well, it's not so much the calorie total number, it's how they're listed on the ingredient. They're typically listed, like a regular nutrition fact of the calories, so on and so forth on the top. But then below that is a section, like say in a pre-workout, like a pump blend or a stimulant blend or, strength blend. And then it has all the ingredients listed underneath that category with a summary, like say 5 grams, but then there's 3 or 4 ingredients within that 5 grams.
I got you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was just kind of clarifying there. That's the last thing I wrote down in my so far 3 pages of notes that we went through. But I think, I think I commented on there. We're going to talk about what stimulants. We were coming out of the transparency of logos. That's, I think, or of labels. That's how we got there. We didn't dive a lot into specific research, that you may have pulled cases for, or any specific case that we could maybe start talking about, some in-depth case study or something.
Well, in terms of proprietary blends, there really hasn't been a case study done on that. However, in terms of case studies, or I guess research articles these days, the main thing to focus on is when it comes down individual ingredients. There's certain things that people would love to have studies on, but in the industry with a lot of unknowns, like, for example, I know yesterday we talked about clenbuterol. The thing is, if that funding has to come from somewhere, if they're not going to use it for a clinical purpose, or there isn't, a reason to continue researching it, the resources are shifted toward other things. Sometimes whatever has the most funding gets the most studies, or if they find a point to where they're not going to continue to research it for whatever reason, in that case, the half-life.
Yeah, that's the, this problem we're having globally, actually, definitely in this country, is the lack of antibiotics, because there's not money in the research that, we're essentially almost run out of antibiotics too. When you mix the rainforest, where a lot of it comes from, long story short, you say it even happens in medicine. So I guess it's affecting, supplements the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of that, supplements are, I mean, rightfully so sometimes compared to pharmaceuticals, pushed to the back burner a little bit. The thing is, big pharma, they have tons and tons of money. They do drive the studies. So while everything is important, of course, research on it, and that's where a lot of times, kind of pick and choose what battles are done. Sometimes they're going to be a study on something that may take much, much longer to be published just because of the funding compared to Project B by another company for like more of the pharmaceutical type. And that's where, priority wise and of course, time frame come into play.
Yeah, man. So, man, there's so many topics. I love going somewhere. And I got a few questions last night, but they're a little specific for now. So let's, we talked a lot yesterday about proteins, man. And we walked through those. You dropped some targeted information on certain proteins, and walk us through there, man. Open the lesson here, protein. Like, this is a show for competence. So again, I got my notes. I'm open. Let's roll.
All right. The thing that people, they overcomplicate protein. I guess I'll break it down really quickly, different types of protein. A lot of people think the most common one, whey protein. Another one that comes from milk is casein. Essentially, naturally occurring protein in milk is going to be a combination of casein and whey. And naturally, at that level, milk protein is both of them at an 80-20 split. So say you have 10 grams of milk protein, you're getting 8 grams of that being casein and 2 grams of whey. So what like whey protein concentrate or isolate does is it's like all whey protein without the casein in it, or casein is the, slower adjusting protein. In that case, if you have a casein protein, you're getting a slow one. So I know a lot of people get confused when they hear.
Yeah, I like how you said that, man. Describing that difference between here's whey protein and here's whey isolate protein. You see this word isolate in a lot of proteins.
Yes, and that's exactly what I'm covering next. There's different types. That's the way of saying, well, it's all whey protein. What difference does it make? Essentially, the difference is going to be the purity, and it's also going to be how fast it is absorbed. The basic one, I guess, what's I describe this is how can you have a whey protein be different types? Well, essentially, think of it like ground beef. It's like comparing 80-20 ground beef to 93.7 to 96.4 in terms of different types of whey. Think of like your standard 80-20, your slightly less processed, less filtered whey protein is going to be the concentrate. It's going to have a slightly higher fat content. It's going to have a little more naturally occurring sugar, maybe a little more lactose, a little more cholesterol, and it'll be less lean. And it's a cheaper protein because it's like less pure. That's not necessarily a bad thing. As less processed something is, sometimes it doesn't strip some of the good things, like some of the naturally occurring substances in the protein. So there's a positive and negative. The next one up, a lot of people think of is whey protein isolate. And essentially, it's a more pure form of whey protein. It strips out the fat, takes out the cholesterol, so on and so forth, typically less carbs. The downside, you have to really check if it's available, the source of that whey protein isolate. There's different methods of processing. Ideally, you want it to be cold processed because there's a protein out there. It was one of the first whey protein isolates. It was ion exchanged. In other words, it's chemically basically stripped, and so it can denature the protein due to a combination of heat and just the chemical alteration. So it's a natural process, but then again, it still breaks down the protein in the process. So it's not as, like a pure of a protein, technically. It doesn't taste that good. It kind of has like a chemically taste compared to a natural cold process one. I mean, some people wouldn't be able to pick it out, but when you compare it to a regular, it's night and day.
So the difference here is the cold process, you're saying, is what you're looking for versus the ion exchange.
Yeah, there's many, many different forms of processing it, but like typically cold process would be best.
How can you tell that on a label?
Sometimes it'll say, sometimes it won't. A lot of times when companies do a cold process, or whatever process it is, they'll list it. It's like whey protein isolate, and also like ion exchange or whatever in the ingredient profile. Some of them do not these days, so you might have to dig a little bit. And once again, it comes down to trusting a brand, what quality of whey protein isolate they're going to be putting in there. And there's one last one, is whey protein hydrolysate. In other words, it's a microfractioned version of whey protein. It's the purest, hands down. It's the fastest absorbing, but it's also one, the most expensive, and two, it's broken down a little bit. It can have kind of a bitter taste in products. So it may taste not as smooth as some, but however, it's just phenomenal. It's like literally easily absorbable, high quality protein. A lot of times they may even use it in things like baby formulas because it's so easy to digest, doesn't cause any digestive issues. So it's like the Cadillac of whey protein.
Interesting. So mothers could use a certain protein if it matches all these qualities in a baby formula of their own if they wanted to make one?
Well, I am definitely not going to speak to that
Yeah,
as
don't say yes, but I mean allegedly maybe with the right
yeah,
training, I mean someone could do
absolutely.
something like that.
In some formulas, if they do use a protein source aside from things, they will use like an easy digested protein, like a whey protein hydroxylate.
Okay.
Yeah, and interestingly, I guess one thing to branch off of, that's just kind of the basic using whey as an example, the different grades. There's also milk protein concentrate versus milk protein isolate. Same deal, the concentrate's less pure. There's a casein, there's different types on there. There's a casein concentrate and a casein hydroxylate. And interestingly, I'll cover that in a second. There's egg proteins, which are medium digesting protein. And of course, there's the plant ones. But essentially, the primary kingpins in the protein game these days are going to be dairy based. An interesting thing in terms of speed of protein, everybody think of it this way: whey protein is typically fast, casein is the slowest, and then proteins like egg protein are going to be somewhat of a medium digesting protein. However, the fastest protein that you can possibly absorb is not whey protein hydroxylate. Instead is casein hydroxylate, which sounds completely counterintuitive. But yeah, it's actually a patented form of
So the
protein.
casein is what slows it down from the isolate. So you isolate it to get away from the casein, and then now the fastest one. Okay, go ahead.
Well, not necessarily. Like literally in milk, think of it this way. This is a perfect example. Have you ever seen yogurt, right? Okay, or cheese. Think of it that way. And cheese itself is almost 100% casein. Casein is a thicker, more solid protein that tends to get a little gelatinous when it's ingested. That's not a bad thing. It's just the nature of the protein. Versus whey, if you think of say cottage cheese, that's a perfect example. Cottage cheese, like the liquid, watery portion of it is going to be like the whey, and like the curds itself, the thicker gelling protein is going to be the casein.
Gotcha.
It's just how it's broken down by the body. So it's not necessarily what process. It's just a matter of how that individual protein is processed.
Gotcha.
But that's a good way of putting it. This is interesting that casein hydroxylate is the fastest digesting protein. It's very pricey, and it's also kind of bitter, and essentially that's how it works. So there's just so many different angles of protein.
Is there a brand out there, one you recommend that's like that, or one that's could be close, or maybe, or you're looking at?
It all depends on exactly what your personal preference is. I sometimes like a blend of proteins. Like I like to do a whey and casein blend. There's some excellent ones out there. There's, if you want a pure whey protein isolate, you can do that too. I know there's some really good but expensive whey protein hydroxylate proteins out there that are like a cold processed whey protein hydroxylate is money, but it's pricey and it's a little bit difficult to find. Another thing people get, I guess, that they aren't familiar with, and we'll cover it in the branched amino acids and tied into protein in a few more minutes here. But just exactly how protein works. Protein, people ask if it's safe, if it's going to make them bulky. A lot of, no offense, ladies out there, they assume that supplements or protein will make them bulky. That's not the case. Protein is simply the building blocks of your body. They're amino acids. And anytime you're supplementing, this is a good example here. Ladies, if you strength train and you take protein or strength train in general, muscle is a metabolic tissue. Anytime you have more muscle tissue, it's going to increase your basal metabolic rate, or how many calories you burn at rest. Therefore, having more muscle tissue or more efficient muscle tissue increases your metabolism. So don't be afraid of lifting weights or getting bulky. That goes for both guys and girls. And trust me, that shit ain't easy. I mean, if it was easy to put on muscle by accident, everybody would be huge. It doesn't work like that. Like they see like some of these fitness competitors or some of the women's physique girls that are bigger. It takes a long, long, long time. And for some levels of what they compete, it doesn't occur naturally. So the benefits of weightlifting and training with weights for ladies, especially with bone health, then the benefits are too numerous to name. It's an excellent thing, which is unfortunate that a lot of ladies get shy away from it. But circling the wagon back into protein, it's perfectly fine for males, females, athletes of any age to take. It's a naturally occurring substance. It's a concentrated source. of food protein.
So, walk a little bit through the egg and plant-based proteins there, and even you know what, we'll throw the soy, the plant, and the egg-based proteins in there for you.
Okay. Typically, egg and soy proteins are going to be used as alternatives to people that cannot tolerate a dairy-based protein. That's the primary use of them these days. Um, I can't really picture, or I guess not picture, but name a protein off the top of my head that has both whey, dairy-based, and a plant protein in it. They will, however, use an animal source multi-blend, like say whey with some egg to have like a fast and medium source. But back to that, again, a lot of people use, like if they have like say a dairy allergy, they'll do like an egg protein. Or if somebody's looking to follow a vegan or vegetarian diet, or they just do not tolerate any form of whey for whatever reason, you know, the plant-based is an alternative. So that can be a reason to use it. But
Are there any, you know, what are the cons to switching one to the plant-based versus whey or any of the other ones we already talked about?
okay. Once again, I just need to cover this sooner rather than later so it makes sense. But one of the biggest things in terms of protein is the bioavailability and how easy it is for your body to break down and utilize it in the body. And also just the amino acid profiles of different types of protein. Essentially, you've heard of branched chain amino acids, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so BCAAs, there's three of them. There's leucine, there's isoleucine, and there's valine. All right, all of those, you can supplement BCAAs separately. They have extra great benefits to them. Leucine is the chief one. What that does is it causes an insulin response within the body. In other words, insulin is the most powerful hormone in the body. It's very anabolic. It stops muscle breakdown. It increases glycogen storage. It shovels nutrients. Insulin is a very powerful hormone. Most people think only about diabetics and think of insulin, but it's a very powerful hormone. So essentially it causes an insulin response. It halts the breakdown of cell tissue. Isoleucine is another very important amino. Obviously, it's one of the BCAAs, and people underrate it. Isoleucine, what it does is it increases GLUT4, and essentially it works in unison with the insulin release to make, I guess, the utilization of carbohydrates at the cellular level easier, in the simple way of putting that. So having, of course, the insulin response as well as sensitivity in terms of activating GLUT4, it has a nice 1-2 combo. The third is valine, and essentially it competes in the brain at the receptors, and it prevents fatigue. It prevents mental clarity. So that's essentially what the branched chain amino acids do.
Not prevents mental clarity. It helps mental clarity, right?
Yes. It competes in the brain for tryptophan. Okay. And typically wins, and that's why it can have benefits of course, increasing or preventing mental fatigue. So essentially, when you think of whey protein, the biggest part of that is the dose of leucine predominantly. Like all these BCAAs occur in protein. 3 grams is essentially the number that's agreed upon in research to initiate protein synthesis or have the insulin spike. So anytime you ingest a protein, that's where the main benefits is coming from. It initiates that protein synthesis. It has a high level of leucine. So whey protein is going to have a high levels of leucine in it. And that's what's going to, of course, get the protein spike. Then your body utilizes all the amino acids and breaks them down. And, of course, starts a muscle building process. So the reason we covered that is when you get into, there's actually a couple studies. I've scanned them briefly. I've been sitting on my desk and I just haven't glanced at them for a while. Is the big plant proteins, the soy. A lot of times people, choose that as their alternative. It doesn't have the same effect on protein synthesis from an insulin spike compared to a whey protein source. It was actually a little bit underwhelming in terms of that, in terms of bioavailability, and of course in terms of the response.
Hey man, I'm catching up to your words and writing them, man. So, I mean, that's the factual research basically that's out there. Is that opinion, subjective? What's the research look like behind that? Are these more than like one study in 7 people?
Yeah, there's actually quite a few studies on it, and this is one of those highly controversial ones in terms of soy protein, just because there'll be advocates for it saying, it causes the estrogen, like estrogenic effects, it's the phytoestrogen. Those are people saying disproving it, that it's only at certain levels. Then there's people saying it doesn't exist because it only happens to certain individuals because everybody processes things differently. Then there'll be people on the camp against it because it's not as bioavailable. It all depends on exactly what you're looking to do. From myself, from what I've seen from it, I don't like it.
Now, are plant-based proteins and soy-based, even egg, are these slower absorption?
Yes, compared to whey protein, they'll be slower absorbed.
Now, someone may want to use that then if, say, they were going to sleep 8, 9 hours overnight and still needed like a slow absorption protein. That would be something maybe to take before bed.
Yeah, it'd be perfectly fine. In all honesty, the whole casein before bed is way overstated in terms of how long it takes your body to start catabolizing tissue. If you have a balanced diet,
That
it's
means,
very
yeah,
overstated.
I'm just assuming here. So, what do you
Yeah,
say? What do you think? What,
I personally, mean, of course, every bodybuilder in the day when they're younger is taking casein before bed. Like, oh man, I don't want to go catabolic overnight. But realistically, it's just unnecessary. It's a nice little source of protein before bed. I mean, hell, right now, typically in contest or even pre-contest, depending on what time of year it is. Right now, my last meal is steak. Steak and asparagus, a whole food protein source. It's I guess I'll branch into that next, but it's a slower dosing protein source. It's a whole food source. It has fat in it. It's usually top sirloin, so it's not crazy high in fat. But anytime you add fat or fiber into a food source, it slows digestion, which is not a bad thing. So that's why sometimes you eat like a really heavy fatty meal. It can feel like it sits in your stomach. It just takes the body a little bit longer to break down sometimes, especially with fiber, because it's just literally fibrous material that your body has to break through. So that's why it increases satiety.
yeah, I love it, man. Those are good sum ups, man, because we could walk down those roads of research of soy and plant based, and really, I mean, aren't we finding that nutrition? Excuse me, I've been coughing a lot. I got that CBD oil or no CBD oil. Listen, I give myself away. I wish it was CBD. It's the MCT oil in the thing. Wait, what's my throat? But rather than walk down the whole plant-based versus whey protein, it's starting to look a little more individualized, right? As people are doing more research, I see people are beginning to start with genetic bases, even doing blood testing to really even match the nutrition more, custom to the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Very briefly on this, this is one thing that haven't had the time to delve into deeply. Interesting talking about one of my friends with it, who's a phenomenal prep coach as well. Is there actually theory out there that typically people respond best to their heritage? Like if you're Mediterranean, typically, like for example, like I'm Greek. So in theory, I found traditional Mediterranean or Greek style diet, a diet that's typically higher in like fats, like especially like fatty fish, olive, things like that, and meats would respond better to that than say having a really heavy starch based diet. So it's very interesting. Once again, there's some decent things out there in terms of studies on it, but I have to look a
Yeah,
little bit more.
who's the set of that kind of theory, man? Who's talking about that one?
It's not really on the radar right now. It's a huge thing. It's just kind of, one of those things you happen to come across. You find it very interesting. And I'm like, wow, if this holds true, this could be very big. But hell, I mean, it could be just like paleo, where all of a sudden everybody gets behind his issues momentum, and now like nobody talks about it all because it kind of fell off the wagon.
Yeah, but it starts to seem practical, but you got to, I guess, be able to break up how much of your heritage is really what percentage and
Mm-hmm.
influence, and how much
Exactly.
the current exterior environment has actually changed that. Because with epigenetics, we're actually beginning to find out that the exterior environment may be manifesting the genetic internal environment. So, I mean, there's a lot to be learned, but man. I talked to a guy, I want to say his name was Trey Kidd at Europa, and they're doing some documentary or study about him and trying to make it in 11 weeks to go pro, basing it all on genetics.
Yeah. That's a very interesting thing. Some people may genetically, you hear about people whose parents, like her dad is a legendary football player and their son turns out to be a very gifted athlete as well. So that can play, some role in it. But at the same time, genetics are a huge part of it when it comes down to the bodybuilding, athletics, things like that. I know you mentioned, once again, not a genomist by any means, shape, or form in terms of genes or genetic study. That's a whole nother thing that mad props to be able to study that.
Yeah, I'm not an epigeneticist either. I'm
Yeah.
not a biologist, so yeah, don't get me twisted. I mean, for further information on those titles, look up Dr. Rhonda Patrick at Found My Fitness and Aubrey DeGray as well. Those are the two that I know that are specialists in those areas if you want to go deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly, I know you mentioned genetic testing. One of can't disclose who it is. It's like a local practice here in Florida. My GP, actually, of all people. She came in and like the first time I met with her, just kind of covering a health history thing, like what surgery he had, so on and so forth. And basically covering surgeries, I broke a bone in my wrist when I was a senior in high school and wrestling in December. And I wrestled for 2.5 months with a broken bone.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday, remember?
Yeah, so I had a broken bone. And she's like, it didn't hurt. I'm like, well, adrenaline gets going and he thinks it's a sprained wrist in wrestling season. Like, oh, it'll heal after wrestling. Lo and behold, it's a broken bone. So then she kind of breezed off into medications like that. And she said, okay, you'd be an interesting candidate into doing a current study she's doing. They did the testing there, it's basically the DNA tissue swab. What they're studying is how different gene types react to pharmaceuticals and pain tolerance. So interestingly, like, she asked me like, oh, like, she kept asking questions about like, this like 9 years ago now. And she's like, oh, well, it's just very fascinating, like you had the high pain tolerance. And then you said, when you like for post-surgery, it was oxycodone or hydrocodone, depending which surgery it was. And I fucking hated it. I'm like, it felt miserable. He's like, oh, okay, interestingly. So basically she's studying how different gene types in this broad study she's doing metabolize pharmaceuticals, in this case, prescription narcotics. And the same deal, very interesting. Different people metabolize caffeine stimulants differently. Some people can take caffeine. Like,
going through a genetic study like that. That's
yeah.
interesting. I wonder how that may play into some addiction research later in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Different predispositions. Like, once again, brushing the surface here. This is your forte. Genetic predispositions to alcoholism.
I'm not a geneticist at all. We can talk about addiction for sure.
More so psychology. That's what I was saying. You're very well good in that aspect compared to myself. I'm very humble in that aspect. That's not my area of expertise. I've studied a bit of it, but not to your extent.
For me, I get a lot of pushback because I actually call this field an art form, not a science. And there is a science to it, but when you apply it in like therapy, there's an art to it, man, for sure.
There is. It's the same deal with a relatable example here. It is definitely an art. You may know everything in the world about, say, personal training or strength and conditioning, but if you don't know how to apply it to clients in the real world, it's a personality. Nobody wants to be personal trained by a fucking textbook. So it's definitely an art in how you individual personality ties into that knowledge, they convey it. You can know all this information that I know, but if you can't convey it simply to the common audience, then it's all for naught. And it's like I said yesterday, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough.
Yeah, I do. I think I even argued that if you can't argue both sides, you're not fully competent, that you're actually naive if you can only defend one side.
Correct. I agree with that 100%. There's many topics that can go either way. And that's why I'm saying, well, it depends. Like, oh, is this good or bad? I'm like, well, it all depends. Like, what do you mean depends? I'm like, well, how about this or this or this? In that case, yes. Or over here, if you have an allergy to everything in the world except for soy protein, by God means take soy protein. Is you have to. In that case, there's always exceptions to everything.
Yeah, well, that's part of the culture we talked about too yesterday, right? Give me the one answer that fits everything I need and make sure it's easy enough for me not to have to change anything.
Exactly. If people want a black or white answer, but oftentimes many are left in gray.
Yeah, it's spoken like a poet, man. Look at that. The vanilla gorilla speaks, man. So walk us. We were covering the BCAAs here, some differences in those proteins. I love that information, man. I got a lot of stuff to keep following up on, man. So did we finish there? Did I squirrel us?
Oh, we got through it. I essentially explained, the types, how protein works, why BCAAs are important and basic bioavailable, things like that. So I'd say we have a pretty thorough, explanation there.
Yeah, man. Excuse myself too, man, if I'm a little formatted this time. I just feel like there's a wealth and a well of information here. So I'm trying to keep myself online and learn something else too directly. But let's see. Stimulants, man. We covered a little bit for the ESPN show airing on May 29th. But for now, I mean, start me off with some stuff, man. Educate me. What should and we shouldn't do? I mean, is coffee good? Is coffee bad? Are energy drinks good? I mean, what's in this stuff? And why does it sometimes kill people? What's going on?
I know we covered briefly yesterday, as well as an ESPN show, basically kind of the interesting thing with a lot of the stimulants are getting like popped these days by the FDA and supplements. How they're typically old supplements, well, actually not even supplements, old compounds that were discovered back in the 30s and 40s as a result of everybody wanting to keep up with ephedra. And then they kind of got pushed off the table. Now they're kind of like, hey, we got this in the old cookbook, let's bring it back. But the thing about stimulants these days, this is a very stimulated world we live in, whether it be the pre-workouts we all take, the coffee craze, there's a Starbucks every block. You're talking about insane amounts of energy drinks. There's stimulants everywhere. There's stimulants in everything. I mean, for God's sake, there's like fat burning, quote unquote, or metabolic protein. They put like thermogenic and caffeine in your protein. There's even branched amino acids, like them, like Optim's Amino Energy, or there's other similar products like that. There's caffeine in everything. You know, you're gonna get your stimulants from somewhere. It's in pre-workouts, and fat burners.
Just to shut down a heart. I mean, are we just running jet fuel through like a Toyota Prius here? Like, I mean,
not necessarily. The caffeine is generally regarded as a very, very safe ingredient. It's been around forever. It's naturally occurring.
You know what the LD50 is on caffeine, or is there one?
The upper day limit. I mean, it all depends on the individual. Typically, I think the highest, like I've seen, the single supplements.
The LD50 I'm referring to is the lethal dose, right? That the lethal dose at half-life. Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know off the top of my head. I've never pushed that limit or looked into it. But then again,
we could search it. I was just interested.
Yeah,
Keep
absolutely.
going.
There's actually, on a funny side note, I know that I think it's still out there. There's a site you can look up if you have to Google it. It's like, how many of this energy drink can you drink before you die or whatever. Wow. I kid you not. It's like, you know, like drink, you type in like, say, like Monster, drink at this body weight, drink this many cans of Monster in your worm food. It's just this hilarious site. You know?
Man, there's crazy. I saw a couple. Here it goes. It says the LD50 of caffeine is a 127 milligrams.
127 milligrams?
Yeah.
There has to be more to it than that.
So? Yeah, I got to talk so you can see it up on the screen there. See? 127 LD50.
Oh, that's the key. 127 milligrams per kilogram.
Okay. There we go. Sorry, I screwed you up.
Yeah. Oh, it's all good. That's all good. I was like, I'm assuming it's per body weight.
Walk me through it. Like I said, I'm not the math guy. I get it. Per body weight, but walk me through it anyway.
So, for example, okay, how much do you weigh roughly in pounds?
175.
Okay, 175. In kilograms, there's 2.246 pounds per kilogram. So 175 divided by 2.246, you're roughly 77.9 kilograms. So your lethal daily dose of caffeine would be 9,895 milligrams, if I'm not mistaken.
Basically.
So let's crunch that number. 77.9 times 127. Yeah, 9,893. So you would have to take an insane amount of caffeine to like die. You're talking basically like a pre-workout that has, 400 milligrams. You'd be talking about taking 245 scoops of it.
Holy shit. Yeah. So to get 9,000, to hit that, I would do 45 scoops of, say, like Jack 3D or something crazy.
Yeah. The thing is, like, you'd have to go out of your typically, like, drinks, Pitbull, I don't really think you'd have an issue. If you start taking, like, pure caffeine powder, or people start taking, like strip caffeine pills, it's like a gram per pill, and multiple times on top of other things, you'd have to be pretty, you'd have to go out of your way or fuck up pretty bad to hit that number. Gotcha. That's not saying that you should go anywhere near that. Just because you can doesn't mean there'll be any benefit, and it would not be fun. Like even typically an upper dose of caffeine per day. I don't really think on purpose I've ever fucked with anything near a gram, just because you feel like anxiety, all the other side effects would make you stop before you probably even got close to that. Because
everybody all right over there, man?
I know. My cat's chilling, looking out the window at the thunder with no rain, but
Oh
Using
yeah.
straight
So I mean that's nuts because you do hear a lot of stories. I saw a couple things on the internet. Some boys playing basketball, drinking a Monster, and just dropped dead. But how much of this is really playing to a predisposition for a heart condition typically?
all those things do take effect. It also depends what else is in our system. It can depend on, different stress. Because anytime that you take, a good example of this is pre-workouts. Like a lot of people like the high stim pre's. I've honestly, admittedly used to do it myself. I've gotten away from them because think of this on leg day. Anything, if you're already increasing your heart rate to a certain extent, on top of doing very heavy physical activity, like your heart rate's already hitting the fucking ceiling, and as you get winded, you get out of breath, your heart rate's just like too much. So it can be counterintuitive to performance to have really crazy amounts of stimulants in your system.
Yeah, I stopped pre-workouts a long time ago, man. I got a sensitive heart.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd be working out and I work out hard and I'd have to sit down. I'm like, this is too much. And I would always, just for safety reasons, if it was ever pre-workout, I always took half of what they recommended to take,
Mhm.
just to try it out. And even those little half doses like that would, put me in chest pumping. It was just too much, man.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of stims go a long way. Typically, a sweet spot for me, caffeine is like 300 at the most. I don't need more than that. But then again, I like taking other things with it, like whether it be a little bit of alpha hemby, or when you could have it in there, picotropin,
Wait,
or
talk me. Why would you take those with that? What's the additionals here?
complementary effects. Alpha hemby or rahusline is a great ingredient. It has nice thermic properties to it, so you sweat a little bit. It helps as a vasodilator. It's just a great overall.
Can you spell that for me, man?
Yohimbe?
Yeah, I can't quite make out what you're saying.
Yeah. Yohimbe. Yohimbe.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's different various effects. It helps with mental clarity. It's a vasodilator, and it helps you perform better. I like how I feel when I take it. Some people don't respond well to Yohimbe. That's actually one of the iffy ingredients these days. It's generally regarded as safe. Most people are perfectly fine with it. Good gauge of something is like.
Hold on, I get to use some knowledge I learned. This would be considered grass status.
Oh yeah, very very much so. Like there are certain countries that won't touch it because you can't have Yohimbe in it, like international.
Huh.
Then some countries don't care, but a lot of them like no, we banned Yohimbe over here, for whatever reason. That is a natural extract.
So it would not then have to go in as like what an NDI then.
Correct. Yeah. It's just a natural extract.
Look, you see what you taught me, man, in one day sitting with you, man. See, I'm learning the basics of the lingo here. See, part I think of being in any field is you got to know all the acronyms.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just a good ingredient, So I like to complement this as like straight up caffeine. Okay, it gets a little bit wired up, but then I like other things to help kind of smooth it out.
What else do you add with the Yohimbe and caffeine? You said you had one or two more, I think.
When you back a couple, probably tropin, just a nice focus agent. Once again, is just to help it with synthesized. One of them is really big these days, which is actually a very interesting ingredient. Is tea cream, and what that is, it's a extract from Chinese tea leaves. It's a stimulant. And it has non-adaptive properties to it. In other words, with caffeine, essentially you keep hitting that same amount of caffeine, your body adapts to it, it gets a tolerance to it. So therefore you have to cycle off it, kind of let your body chill, get not used to it again, or you have to increase the dose to get, that same effect. Tea cream is a stimulant that doesn't exhibit those properties. It hits as hard the first time as it will the 30th time. So it's a very interesting thing. It kind of pairs nicely with caffeine. I don't feel a huge rush just from tea cream itself. However, it's a nice sustained level energy. So the caffeine kind of hits a little bit quicker. The tea cream kind of carries it over. So it's a nice, brings you up, keeps you level, and gradually brings you down. And of course, it hits as hard too. So it may not get as much hit from the caffeine, but you're still going to feel the theacrine.
Okay, is that what you're saying? Theacrine. I can't quite make out what you're saying. Tea green, theagrine. I heard the tea extract, but
well, there's different trademark names for it. So basically, teacrine, Teacrine, teacrine.
All right,
Teacrine.
Yeah, if you were sitting in the cave, man, it would come out a little bit better. But yeah, so that's kind of your pre-workout that you like to stick with about 300 milligrams of caffeine too.
Yeah, about 300 milligrams of caffeine, and just depending on what I'm feeling like that day. But keep it simple. But back to what we're getting at with the amount of stimulants is like, if you're taking, goddamn, you see people taking a pre-workout. They're also taking a fat burner. I mean, God, like you're taking a pre, 300 milligrams of caffeine, taking a full serving of just, the thermogenic, you're probably looking at another 150, 300 milligrams of caffeine from a thermo. That's over half a gram of caffeine just from two things. If they drink coffee with their boys, or lady taking some coffee, they're adding in another 80 to 100 milligrams a cup, depending on how strong it's brewed. It's 700. You have a second cup of coffee later in the afternoon. If you're used to it, you're 700-800 milligrams of caffeine. It adds up.
Yeah, it definitely does. I get to lower my coffee intake by using the MCT oil. That slows you down a little bit, keeps the energy going too, because too much of that MCT, and I'm running to the bathroom.
Yeah, MCTs, they can have a bit of a laxative effect if you overdo it. But the other thing too, interestingly, if you is in a keto, which is essentially where you're putting your body in ketosis, like you're not ingesting carbohydrates, you're not having a insulin response. It's a ketogenic cutting diet. You can always look that up if you want to know more about that.
I've run something similar to like a 5-2 thingy type deal, but it's not by the books. I do it kind of by feeling. It's a mix of kind of like the primal thing, but I may even fast a day or twice a week if I feel like it. Depends on how much I ate the next day, but I never really have a cheat day. I don't. I kind of eat when I'm hungry. I graze. It's weird, man. That's how, dude. I was 245 back last year November, and then from November to I think middle of January, I went from 245 to 185.
Dang. Good work.
Yeah, just I'd stop. I only worked out once or twice a week. All I did was just switch how I ate, what I ate, went organic as clean as I could. I mean, obviously it's difficult to do, and it was crazy, man. Back pains went away. It was nuts being a lifelong football player for a while, and weightlifter. A lot of things hurt when you're 34, 35. So, I switched to that, and it's amazing all the things that went away quick in those days.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just what's comfortable for your body, what you're currently doing, and just keeping a long-term maintenance to yourself.
Yeah, it works, and then you look around too, and you're like, I don't see too many 75, 80-year-old jack dudes. I mean, they're around, sure, but given the size of the population, and I was kind of like, I bashed my head playing football for a long time, and God knows what in the nightclub business, doing what else. And I'm like, I don't have much on the back end either, so I'm going to at least try to drop some of this linebacker padding I don't need anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you've always been a pretty big dude since we were talking playing football. How many calories are you taking in a day, man?
Right now, about 5,000. I'm in off season, pushing up to hopefully, most of it probably going to happen within the next week or so before I start contest prep. Sitting about 256.5 this morning before we start shredding it down. But light for heavyweight, I got to weigh in at 225.25 in October 22nd for the show I'm doing. But typically heavyweights in off season, they weigh that much.
When you start training for that, man, when you generally, how long's your training camp, if you will, if it's in October?
It's training year round. Like I really never have a time off. It's essentially off season. You're in a calorie surplus, or following contests, you're in off season, but you follow a reverse diet. In other words, you gradually increase your calories very carefully, so you don't have a rebound effect in terms of your metabolism. And the thing is, after a show, your body is very primed and in a good state to grow. It's ready to rebuild itself. It's ready to be de-stressed. So it's a very anabolic time. So if you do it correctly and you gradually increase, your calories, and you'll put on a hell of a lot of lean tissue and stay lean. Your body's hypersensitive to insulin and nutrients. But if you go out the gate after a show and I'm gonna eat whatever the hell I want, you'll put on a ton of fat with it too, because your body will store everything. So that's why you see a lot of people come out of a show and they'll rebound bad. One is that you'll feel miserable, they'll look miserable, and you wasted all this time to use this key time of growth.
You see that with MMA fighters, actually, man. That's a similar thing with bodybuilders. I'm hearing then. So right after a show, or right after a fight, they've been training so hard that a lot of them just kind of go, all right, I don't want to do anything anymore, and they'll eat whatever, kind of even slow down on some training, relax, and you see them puff up pretty quickly too. But
Yeah.
But they drop it quick too, though. Their muscle memory is ridiculous.
Mhm. That's very true. I mean, you need to take your body some time to rest after a show. I mean, you're putting your body through hell. Typically, I know your question is how long. So essentially, I'm 22 weeks out as of today to be October 22nd. I'm probably going to do probably a 19, 20-week cut. So I have a couple weeks of off season left here. And then gradually cut it down. The longer you take, within reason, you'll typically maintain more lean muscle. You're not having to cut calories as hard. You're not having to do as much cardio. And you gradually, slowly do it to, maintain as much muscle as you can. It's the name of the game. Keep as much muscle as you can while getting as lean as you can in bodybuilding.
All right, so I'm going to throw this out there. Where do you stand with the whole gluten idea?
It's interesting. Obviously, there's those you can't have with celiac disease. There's those people that think have gluten sensitivity. I actually experimented myself for a good year and a half of just doing things aside from eating gluten. I wouldn't go out of my way to make sure, oh my gosh, I can't use a soy sauce. It's not gluten free. Like, I wouldn't go to that extent, but I really didn't eat wheats. Like, I didn't eat breads. I didn't eat pasta. Or, muffins, things like that had like wheat in them, or cookies. I mean, I don't eat that much stuff anyway. But in terms, I just did all like other carb sources, a whole lot of sweet potatoes was my main one, oatmeal, gluten-free oats, things like that, and a hell lot of white rice. And still to this day, I have some in my diet, just for the carb source to keep my carbs mixed in there. But it's interesting. Some people do get a little inflammation in terms of having wheat in their diet. Everybody, once again, metabolizes it differently. So there's people that simply cannot have it, celiac disease. And then there's some people, like, just experiment. One thing is you notice it a little bit more when you haven't had it, and then you try it and see how your body reacts to it. But everybody has a different level how they react. To me, I don't notice a huge difference. In terms of it, I digest things a little differently. Like this, once again, there's other factors, It could be how I digest it, or it could be like, okay, if you're not eating this, what are you using instead? You're eating, say, more sweet potatoes or oats or high fiber foods. You may feel different digestively. But
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going to go next, is to the fibers. And Dr. Rhonda Patrick, again, at Found My Fitness, is the deep expert here, but she talks about multiple fiber sources, different kinds of fiber. And where does that play in for you personally? How should people that are maybe walking into nutrition, bodybuilding, look at fiber in their diet?
It's essential for digestion. And typically if you're eating nice whole foods, like whether it be your greens like asparagus, spinach, kale, or your carbohydrate sources, nice whole food carbohydrate sources like sweet potatoes or oatmeal, or if you're having your fruits in your diet, all those things are going to contain naturally occurring fiber. So if you're eating just whole foods, it's easier to get your fiber in than most people think. If you're eating a heavily processed food diet, on the other hand, then, it's more problematic. Interestingly, I'm going to shift gears on you here because it's a pretty interesting one. You'll probably find it's entertaining. Is one of the, most highly touted things. People ask me, oh, what do you eat? And they're like, oh, so I'm yeah, a lot of white rice. Like, white rice. Everybody's surprised I say white rice instead of brown, because everybody has it pounded in their head that brown rice is king.
Right.
That's not the case. In all honesty, white rice is way better than brown rice will ever be. The main reasons that brown rice, I'll ask you this. Why is brown rice considered good? What have you heard?
I don't consider it better. I keep my jasmine rice in there, which is probably a little bit worse, but yeah, never really bought into it.
Yeah, not at all. I use jasmine myself. Essentially, brown rice, I think jasmine tastes amazing too. That's one benefit. Is that with brown rice, it's one, people say, oh, it has higher fiber, lower glycemic index, more nutrients, so on and so forth. It's less processed. Okay. Well, actually, it's counterintuitive, as in the 1 or 2 grams of fiber, most times 1, depending on the hybrid of rice, gram of fiber is a negligible difference. So, okay, the fiber argument's out the window. Secondly, the glycemic index isn't all that much lower than white rice, especially anytime you consider glycemic index, which is very, very overstated to begin with. Anytime you're ingesting a carb source with a protein or a fat, it's going to lower that anyway. So once again, it's so many pieces there that can be moved, and also kind of throws that out the window. But the biggest one is that the fiber itself, the bran of the rice that they're leaving attached in brown rice, contains a chemical called phytic acid. Phytic acid can cause inflammation or irritation of the digestive system. It's also an anti-nutrient, so it can actually be counterintuitive as it can interfere with absorption of nutrients. So this whole thing of it being touted as better because of the fiber is actually detrimental. The white rice is easy to digest. It's very hypoallergenic. People is generally regarded as very easy digesting. Like a lot of people would have gluten allergies. For alternatives, like cream of rice rather than cream of wheat, is processed ground white rice. It's very easy to digest regardless of the person. It's very hard to find people with rice allergies, especially with a white rice that's been processed. It's a great pure source for athletes. It's pure glucose. It's easy to break down. It's a good fuel source. That's why bodybuilders love it. It's a great source of carbs. You can eat it. It isn't as filling as other things like sweet potatoes if you're trying to get your carbs in. So jasmine rice or basmati, whatever it may be, it's where it's at.
Yeah, one of my fruit secrets for fiber is pears. I have a couple good organic pears laying around too.
Yeah, I don't do much fruit at all these days. I know, blasphemy, just because of sugar content.
No, man. The Primal Blueprint speaks to that too, man. Way less fruit. He's talking only 12 to 24 type grams of carbs intake anyway, or sugar a day. So, I mean, fruit itself is limited. And you know what I like? His story about why fruit would be limited is he refers his diet back to where we just wandered and walked. We didn't grow our own food, right? So he looks at life as if we were just walking around in nature. And it wouldn't be every day that you would walk up on fruit, and much less in abundance. And so he works it into his diet plan, if you will, the Primal Blueprint, like that, is treat fruit as that specialty that you have once in a while, that thing you come across randomly.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, like, if I do choose to have fruit, my favorite fruit would happen to be berries, which are actually, to me, like the best one. They have typically the lowest sugar content and the highest fiber. Like blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, so if I do choose to have some fruit, I love the taste of them. They're delicious. That probably pears or apples.
Blueberry guy all day.
So, what's that? But once again, I eat little to no fruit mainly because of, just the sugar content. Personal preference.
Sugar just came out like that, right? I heard, is it true that sugar, natural sugar basically is just as worse or not better than, high fructose corn syrup?
Yeah. That's the interesting thing. Like there's this huge debate right now in terms of high fructose corn syrup being better for you or worse for you than sugar. Once again,
right? They're both just shitty.
They're both, yeah, it's just sugar. That's the point. I mean, you have a more chemically processed version of it. Like the main thing is that the long time has been that high fructose corn syrup is more easily stored as body fat and more of a food product rather than actual food. How about this? Just don't eat fucking sugar. Naturally occurring, sure, like sweet potatoes have sugar in them. Fruits can have sugar in them. But if you're drinking fruit juice or eating snack cakes or candy and shit like that, then okay, yeah, you have to. Yeah, it's sugar regardless. The biggest joke I gave somebody, I can't remember who. I was in college. Nutrition class, this girl came in, she's all like organic this, organic that. And I'm like, you're missing the point. Like you eat. Okay, it's great. I mean, just because you have organic sugar, it just makes you an organically fat hippie. Okay. So.
Yeah, the organic word even is starting to get butchered up because I think in some states or maybe wider that organic really only needs to produce 70% of its processing has to be organic to get that label.
I believe so. I know it's some, very misleading statistic in terms of what's on there. But, it's translating that, make an organically fat hippie. I mean, okay, that, like you say, 100% natural. It's like some...
Well, you know what? That leads me to a question, man, because, I have a personal question. When, I use a plant-based protein only because we talked about that yesterday. Lactose can bother me sometimes, but... anyway, anywhere from hemp to something else. So I'm not going to name the side brand I use once in a while. I like the flavor, I like the taste, and it's up there. Bodybuilding.com offers it and all, and it ranks up there. But when I look at something and it says, 2 cups of kale, 3 whatever cups of broccoli. I mean, exactly how are those powdered plants? Is it just that organic? I mean, if it's saying that, are they just grounding it up essentially and making it? Is there a chemical process added to making these plants cup of KO, cup of all this in there?
Essentially, there's drying it and grinding it, turning it into a powder form and blending it in. So it's natural. It's fine if you choose to drink it in a powder. So it's like basically a dehydrated version of juicing.
Yeah, I'm just double checking, man, because sometimes
Yeah, absolutely.
you think about it, and that leads me to kind of another topic, man. Micronutrients, man. Walk us through this hazy world.
Well, there's a lot of things interesting these days. Essentially, if you're eating a balanced diet, getting all your green veggies in, your meats, natural food sources, give them the processed crap. It's pretty hard to mess that up. Like if you're eating only processed things, you only eat certain foods, you're boxing yourself in, then maybe, yeah, you may see a little more issue with that, But I guess the thing to keep this as short as possible, we have plenty of time, is just because, it's a very broad subject. The most refreshed one is, interestingly, that there's been studies saying multivitamins don't work. Like there's no solid conclusive evidence that taking a multivitamin improves long-term health. It's everybody thinks of multivitamins this kind of like a nutritional insurance to make sure you're covering all your bases. However, yes or no, do I need a multivitamin? Is it essential to staying healthy, long-term health, so on and so forth? It's inconclusive. There's nothing stating that you have to take a multi, or that taking a multivitamin provides X benefit. So it's kind of interesting after all this time, you're pounding your head, even the kids, with Flintstones vitamins.
That's what, dude. How did that happen? You were just in my head because I was like, the Flintstones made a killing off me, man, because I used to eat them things like sweet tarts.
Yeah, absolutely. Who did, It's like I could see a benefit for it. Once again, this is just from my perspective of, for say, making sure your kids, if they're very picky eaters or they won't eat certain foods, then maybe like a chewable multi, just because like to make sure they're getting all for development.
I'm sorry, but here. Look, you're trying to be nice, but listen, parents, grown parent person, if the child in front of you and you say never in my life, but she just won't eat it. He just won't eat it. Listen, the kid will be hungry, and when you put it there, eat it. And whether the kid does or doesn't, find a way to make it to where the kid could like it. Don't be too lazy either. And so I don't like letting parents off the hook by telling me their 4-year-old just won't eat it, or their 6-year-old, and then, well, you buy all the other stuff too. So the child learns, I don't have to eat it, because eventually you'll just buy the crap anyway. Sorry.
So, once
I ranted.
There may be that. Well, the point of the podcast, you get a few emails of that, but here's the key going to that. You exactly hit the nail on the head.
Dude, you know what I say on this podcast? I get a lot of heat for this one. Since I went that far, I'm going to go ahead and go this far. I say that if your child is morbidly obese, that is child abuse.
I agree. It's 100%. You control what your fucking kid eats. Here's the point. I'll be a fucking parent. If they don't eat it, well, okay, I guess you're not getting this. I understand. Once again, I get it. I don't have kids. I mean, I have
the psychological damage. They set it up for them. The psychological damage. I even talk about it even in the book here, The Rampage. That psychological damage, you should know you set them up for. But really question yourself as a parent. If you go, what other earthly responsibility do I have to teach my child other than, here's what you eat so you live longer, here's what you do so you don't suffer?
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing is, I know for, once again, this would be something that has to be studied, but a quick joke is, people talk about their kids and like, oh, how about you? You have any kids? I'm like, yeah, I have a 7-month-old at home. I'm like, oh, that's sweet. I'm like, yeah, her name's Chica. And they, what the fuck?
You're one of those. You're the cat kid person.
The cat kid. Well, it's more funny than anything. She's spoiled rotten. She hangs out, she chills. But hell, even she eats like the Blue Buffalo natural cat food.
Yeah, you're seeing that. What I see the other day they're doing for dogs. I saw a pet therapist.
That could be. I mean, they have anything and everything, but then again, it's just a balance that has, it's like real meat and stuff. I'm like, there you go, cat. Enjoy.
I'm with you, dude. I'm one of the ones that feeds my dog from the table. I don't care. I'm not that guy. And look, here's a theory behind it, too. Anytime my friends or whatever come over, Roxy, she doesn't play. She's all up on you if you got food. But the way I see it is they changed their entire genetic makeup from wolves to these little dogs. Now, we did a lot of messing around in between there, but back in the day, they decided to change their entire being for us. How dare I not give them some food instead of this lame stuff they got to eat every day in a boring, 9 to 14-year life, in between there, give or takes. And yeah, I'm gonna give her the good portion of my meat or something after I'm done eating, man, right from the table too. And she's not gonna
Yeah,
have to sit and spin and talk and do all this human shit to get it.
exactly. I mean, grew up on a farm, we give our dogs table scraps, and like, oh, it's so bad for your dog. My dog was a yellow lab that lived to be 15 years old. I think he did all right.
That's right, man. Instead, they kick them and they shove them, get down, and they yell at them. And I'm like, you know what, dude? The dog's got a shit life because one, because it's with you, and two, you keep giving it bull crap. You know, you're giving your dog cancer. Man, how did we get here, Drew?
Talking about how piece of shit parents that have obese kids are abusing their child.
That's right. And look, I'll pull up a little bit just to say, look, parents, if you're going through it too and struggling, look, the body to me is a reflection of the mind. And so we can't bestow those same stressors that you have on your life on your children. So if you're going through something, please find help. You know, a lot of times working on the mental first will help you then allow to work on the physical, you know, and vice versa. It can work both ways for people. Please, find the help, man, because it's a long suicide doing it like that, you know?
Exactly. It just starts from the ground up. We'll play nice. It's true. I get it. There's genetic predisposition to things, and it's tough to be a parent sometimes. Everybody wants to be their kid's friend, but, be a parent too,
You know
if
what I
you
found?
treat good habits.
Just let them learn. Give them the education because they want to know too. Don't force it. Don't say like, "Hey, here's a research that says," or whatever. Hand them research. Let them learn because I kind of present some things. A lot of time, Morgan sets me straight. She's like, that's not true." She knows. Then this generation's informed like yours. I mean, you're 10 years my younger, man, and the information that it's full. So, I mean, let's assume that somebody's not eating a full balanced diet, right? And is this where micronutrients come in? I mean, are there supplements for micronutrients? I'm seeing a lot of new protein blends and things coming out now with this micronutrients, or is this another trend thing that you talk about?
I'd say it's another trend. I mean, all of a sudden, oh, we need to put micronutrient in protein. It's another selling point. Essentially what it is, it's just overstated. And keeping that very to the point, it's overstated.
Yeah, it is because so it is then. So you see it coming in different levels. You see it coming everywhere from krill oil to certain mushroom things. You see all kinds of certain additives being put into these micronutrients essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just overstating. In terms of micronutrients, yeah, it's overstated, but for certain things like I don't know why you'd put it in a protein, but you said like krill oil. Like if you're supplementing some things like fortifying them, adding in like omega threes, which are for most people tougher to get in their diet, then yeah, by all means. Like I do encourage people to take like an omega-3 supplement, like whether it be fish oil or krill oil, something like that, because it's an excellent anti-inflammatory source of fat that you may not necessarily get, some of the best sources, these things like salmon or avocado or olives. It's just, tougher to, get through your diet without adding the fats all the way up.
What's one of the biggest things that you hear a lot that you just scream at your phone or Facebook or wall or Instagram to where this is bullshit? What's something that pops up that you just want to scream at all the time?
Um, I'm sure, like, I don't have anything on the top of my head right now. There's certain shit that people, the thing that probably annoys me the most is when it comes down to the black and white issue of like, oh, this is healthy. It must be healthy just because like of X. Like the longest time, people like, oh, it's fat free, it's healthy, and they're fucking pounding a bag of Twizzlers. Or oh, it's this is gluten. The big one is this gluten free. Like gluten free doesn't mean healthy. Not this isn't picking on gluten. It's just in general, there's a wave of gluten free. And you see like ready take and bake cookies, gluten free, and it still have 10 grams of sugar, 7 grams of fat, and per cookie. It's a fucking cookie. Just because it's gluten free doesn't mean it's a magical bullet you can eat as much as you want of. That's the thing. Or oh, it's a dairy free ice cream and it says made with coconut milk. I'm like, oh great, yeah.
Well, then it's not fucking ice cream.
Yeah, it's like coconut cream, but it's iced coconut cream. There we go, meet in the middle. But coconut is a fantastic fat source, but it's high in fat. So okay, you're replacing regular probably skim milk with whole coconut milk. Same sugar, it's still fucking ice cream. It doesn't make it healthier. It's ice cream.
Yeah. I mean, if you could to stay similar around the same topic, could you pull back the veil on maybe let's say there's someone that just doesn't know about nutrition, right? And they're kind of going, where do I start? What do I do? Kind of pull back the veil on something that may be one of those first barriers that they're gonna those fake barriers of bullshit marketing things they're gonna get hit with. What's some of those first veils maybe they can help them navigate through?
Well, the first thing is don't buy a cookie cutter diet. That's the thing. Everybody's like, oh, okay. Every motherfucker on Instagram, they lose 3 pounds, and then their next post is, let me contact me for your diet help, $250 a month. Everybody's a contest coach or a diet coach because like all of a sudden they think they're magically qualified, or somebody's done a contest and they think they're a prep coach, or somebody's lost weight, they think they're a nutrition guru. Okay, that's great and all, but at the same time, with the best of intentions, you can be misleading people. The other one is when people, they have good intention, but then they get lazy, or they think one size fits all. Hey, contact me, I'll pay somebody for a 6-week plan. It's a copy and paste of almost an exact diet they wrote for somebody else. Different people respond differently to different foods. They have different body types. They have different needs for carbs compared to fats. Some people respond to one better than the other at higher levels. Some people cut differently in terms of how many fats they can intake if they stay hard and dry while increasing carbs and lowering fat. The thing is, just don't buy a cookie cutter diet. You can use it as a framework to kind of get an idea of how to eat. Like, oh, okay. The biggest thing I talk about is nutrient timing. When I create diets for people, whether it be, for a contest or if they just want to improve their physique a little bit or lose weight, the biggest part of that is nutrient timing. But the thing is that don't use the diet that somebody else uses. You can't eat the diet that, say, Phil Heath eats. He has a different needs. He has a different body type. He's very genetically different, very gifted. It's the average person, even if that same body weight eats that, they'll get fat as fuck. It won't work different, same for him. So with the best of intention, don't do a cookie cutter diet. Essentially, find that framework, manipulate it, and kind of experiment, or get a coach that knows they're doing, that works with you individually and can work and get it customized for you. So that's the biggest first thing, is just, know that you're different.
Dude, what you did was just protect everybody from buying one of those cookie cutter meal cut plans they sell you on TV at 4 a.m.
Yeah, and here's the thing, is typical people, they'll reinforce this by, oh, I took it and I lost weight. Well, great, you're eating less fucking calories. But that doesn't mean that it was the best approach. It's like, okay, if you're eating a random diet and you're eating 3,000 calories a day, you go on this cut made for everybody meal plan that is 2,000 calories, you're eating 1,000 calories less. Of course you're going to lose weight. You dropped your calories by 1,000 fucking calories. So,
And you see, aren't a lot of people getting away from the numbers to the calorie numbers and more just focusing on the activity versus the intake kind of thing? Not looking at calories.
Yeah, they don't. Well, the numbers thing, they do the point system or whatever like that. It's a handy tool that, like, it's better than not. Here's the thing. Let me, once again, both sides of understanding this is it's better than nothing. In other words, like if you go from having no diet structure to having some diet structure, that's a step. But, don't make it your whole reliance. It all does come down to your calorie intake versus your calorie expenditure. If you're ingesting more calories than you're burning, you gain weight.
I was kind of asking really directing on the kind of calories. I shouldn't say the numbers don't matter. It's the kind of numbers that matter, right? I didn't finish my thought there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. There's people that are going to say, I don't even give a fuck. If it fits your macros, people, do you. That's whatever. It's like the joke with that is, oh, have you seen the video about the guy that won the Mission Olympia talking about if it fits your macros? Oh, I haven't either, because it doesn't exist. There's a rhyme and reason they don't do that kind of diet. It works for the general population, fine. It helps keep you sane. You can get some results, but an eliteness, then not so much. From a practical standpoint, it's fine. It's fine, but, use it sensibly. But the point I'm making is calories are not just calories. If you have 2,000 calories in your diet a day, and getting all of them from carbohydrates and a small amount from protein and the other from fats, not going to respond the same to a high majority of from protein than I say like a small amount of fat and a decent amount of carbs. Everybody is wired differently. They respond differently to different levels. So, experimenting within that. And then same deal even within calories. I would be hard pressed. Here's like a very vague way of putting this. This is a very broad topic for this type of thing. Is, okay, people say, oh, the source of carbohydrates doesn't matter. Okay, please just look at me and tell me that 50 grams of sugar is going to have the same effect on your body as 50 grams of carbs from sweet potatoes. They're both carbs, right? Are you going to really argue that the 50 grams of sugar is going to have the same amount of effect as 50 grams of sweet potato? I know it's a good, like a broad example. Like I'm not going to eat 50 grams of sugar. So okay, well, drink a juice that has 50 grams of sugar in it. Okay, you have liquid calories. So your body's going to metabolize it the same way, right? It's going to have the same long-term effect. Is that correct? So it's using common sense for the most part in terms of that sometimes.
All right, I want to break in because we got about 10 minutes, before we close this out. We'll be hitting 3 hours. I can't hit iTunes with more than that. And,
Right.
Estrogen, testosterone, hormones, where do these play into what products you're seeing develop now that are coming out of labs that you work in? How does that play into the body? How does estrogen play into everything versus testosterone, all of it?
Okay. In terms of supplements, you're really not going to see people dabble that much into that specific realm, especially today that the pro hormones are gone, things like that. It's a very gray area. The biggest thing you'll see these days for companies is different types of testosterone boosters. In other words, there are supplements that occur naturally that work with your body to maximize its natural output of testosterone. Anything outside of that, exogenous forms, aka synthetic forms of testosterone, estrogen, so on and so forth, they're obviously illegal. For supplements, they have to be prescribed by a doctor. So you're not going to see a whole bunch of that in terms of the supplement industry, aside from T boosters, maybe a anti-estrogen, possibly, things like that. But then again, the effectiveness for a, once again, quote unquote, naturally occurring product is going to be tough. So there is a upswing these days in hormone replacement therapy for ladies, having your estrogen balanced out, for men having testosterone replacement. And people will go both ways with this, saying it's safe or not safe. But for, say, a male perspective too, I highly encourage males in their older ages and when testosterone is declining, get their hormone levels checked. They think, they only think testosterone in terms of, like, say, sex drive or muscle mass. But okay, think of it this way too. Low levels of testosterone can affect your heart health. Your heart is a muscle. If it atrophies, if you're not having, normal levels of testosterone, it's, in theory, it could affect your heart. Once again, it's a very broad, far-reaching example, but, it's not as simple as, high test equals, just big muscle, high sex drive. There's other things people just don't consider.
Yeah, now I heard someone say, actually at Europa, I had them on an interview, and they basically said if it comes to hormones or estrogen, testosterone of any kind, unless it's from a doctor, it doesn't work.
Yeah, essentially, the chemical version is going to be the best one. There are a few ingredients out there, like D-aspartic acid, that have shown some promise for increasing natural test production. But, other than that, typically your best route will be the pharmacology route, done by something that's qualified, like an endocrinologist, to, monitor your hormone levels, keep it on blood work, see where things at.
And I try to, and the hormones run deeper too than just the basic 3 or 4 that people talk about. I mean, there's 25, 30 something different variations. I can't really remember where I was getting the info, but when they expanded on the different types of hormones beyond just the basics, it gets a lot deeper than what you hear a lot about.
Yeah. Endocrinology is a whole nother amazing field of research, and it's, once again, definitely not one that's simple, especially for this time frame. But
yeah, Dr. Mark Gordon, bro, is where I send people to. He's a far-right expert on that. He's been using it to treat veterans coming home with PTSD. He's getting people unhooked off of opioids. I mean, Dr. Mark Gordon's research, and they're not even using the word hormone anymore. I think it's testosterone, something they've expanded on it. But his research, that's where I started. I actually mentioned him in the book too, The Cognitive Rampage, in the environmental, biological, scientific chapter. But man, he's where I point people for sure on that, man. So, I mean, I guess the question was basically verifying that if it's not from a doctor, for the most part, you're rolling dice.
Exactly. I agree with that. I mean, what's your favorite T booster? Chesty. People they're like, okay, smart ass. I'm like, well, it's proven, it's real. It's a synthetic testosterone. It's going to work.
Yeah, well, a lot of steroids, testosterone, etc. All the things got a bad rap. That's why I quote that Bigger, Stronger, Faster movie Chris Bell did, that documentary, because he walks into that era that I was kind of from, that Hulk Hogan era. that steroids, Lyle Alzado, he covered that whole myth, and he kind of points out that steroids aren't near as dangerous as they were sold to us as.
I agree with that. They're very overstated by a very misinformed and misunderstood subject. I think the best point that you made in that is that the long-term effects of such anabolic substances are not known, and those studies won't be done because, one, of funding, and two, is because they're, quite frankly, a lot of people consider them unethical. So when there's a potentially dangerous substance, potentially, once again, it's just unknown. People argue, oh, they can't be good for long-term health, so on and so forth. Then there's people saying, well, look at somebody like Arnold. He's old, he still looks great, he's been around forever. Then there's the same school camp, like all these big dead bodybuilders, guys dying in their 50s, 60s, things like that. There's a fucking tool in wherever he's from, Ziz, whatever his name was, the legend of aesthetics, the guy that looks like a 16-year-old girl or whatever the fuck he is.
Well, you're seeing that, man. But then now his recent movie, Prescription Thugs, now brings to light a lot of these athletes that, have used some things along those lines that have now been battling opiate addiction because of the pain from competing, etc.
Yeah. And honestly, when it comes to people having issues with anabolic substances, a big part of this is hilarious. Is everybody thinks they can control it in sports. This is going to touch his nerves, and it's just truth. Is the drug testing is probably 10 years beyond the drugs. Let's put it this way. A good example, Barry Bonds, back in the day when they busted in the Balco scandal. They would never have figured out what he was taking. They never would have. Because the only reason they figured it out, somebody sent a fucking vial of the drug to the WADA, and they got it. They didn't know what the hell it was. They had to go through, retest it, and figure out exactly what the substance was. It was undetectable at that time.
This Nowitzki guy, though, for the UFC, the guy that busted Armstrong, he's pretty on top of this stuff, though.
Yeah, absolutely. There's people that would argue, oh, these guys got to be on something. Or, then there's ones, they know they're on something, but it's a league that, thrives on bigger, faster, stronger, pun intended. They let it slide on the rug. Okay, but the funny thing is,
man, they've shut that shit down, man. They brought that dude in, yeah. And what's true is you've seen a lot of performers go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they decrease. Another really funny thing to me, at least, is if you haven't noticed, whether it be Matty Ramirez, Brian Cushing, numerous other athletes these days, when they've been busted and they get reported, they're never popped for any specific drug that they're taking. They're always caught or test positive for using HCG, human chronic gonadotropin, which is oftentimes, after a steroid cycle, used for kickstarting testosterone production. So anytime you take synthetic testosterone, your body essentially gets the signal that it doesn't need to produce it anymore because there's an outside source. It can cause your body to shut down its natural production. Therefore, afterwards, you have to kickstart it. So a lot of guys, when they get busted, it's because they test positive for HCG. However, HCG can be used in men to increase sperm production for fertility purposes. So it is legal to get for that reason. That's why it's more of a gray area where the suspension's light. Like, I had a legitimate reason that I was using HCG. Or it could be that it's illegal just for that reason. It's just a masking agent, in terms of performance-enhancing drugs.
Wow, man. We could go deep down so many rabbit holes, as I'm sure we will in the future, man. You'll come back and do this again, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We got any? Let's see. We have actually a few minutes because I got to do some opening, closing stuff. But is there something we didn't get to, man, that you thought we would? Something on the notepad in front of you? I call it podcast remorse.
You know what? The thing is, I know I'll be back. I'm sure I'll come across some good story here down the road that we'll talk about again. I think in terms of what we can cover in that short amount of time, off the top of my head, I think we nailed everything. We got in depth on quite a few things. It's been great, but I know we'll have more stuff prepared by next time we get together.
Yeah, but well, dude, no preparity on the TCR. We just freestyle. This now makes we are, I don't know, about 7 minutes from 3 hours because we did an hour and a half change yesterday, a little hour and a half change today. But iTunes only gives me 3 hours to post up on there, man. So thanks for doing this, dude. I got notes galore, man, and I'll probably be emailing you questions and definitely forwarding you all the fun emails that I get if I get.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
Hey, so where can everybody find you, man, and hire you and get you to come in or do whatever? Where can they look you up?
Instagram rules the world these days. You can check it out. It's Vanilla Gorilla Petey, Pety. It's my IG. Or you can always hit me up with an email at abpetersjr@gmail.com. If you need to get in contact me for anything like there, I'm sure I'll have some questions. If not, it's easy to filter out the bullshit, so go ahead. But,
Yeah. All right. Any sponsors you want to give some love to, man, or shows you're hitting? Anybody you want to shout out? That kind of stuff.
Essentially, if y'all know a place to find me, any of the Europa shows will be out there. Of course, give a shout out to the Cognitive Rampage, ESPN Radio. We've been doing some good work for there. So shout out to you guys for having me. And I feel it's my bud into something potentially awesome down the road of getting this a regular thing. We've had some good feedback so far. We've had some bad feedback so far, but fuck them. So.
Yeah, well, it's still 70-30 good. So we got 70-30 winning. Until then, we stay on the air. So until that follows over about 50-50, we're done, man. But on May 29th, you'll be on ESPN Radio, where people can just download the ESPN app and search under live radio for it's ESPN 580 Orlando. Find that station under the app live. Once you download it, it's there forever. You just hit tap. That's where they can listen. But if you're in Orlando, you can actually use the radio dial if you still use one of those. But that will be on Sunday, May 29th at 9 a.m. Eastern.
Baller. We've got some great stuff in that show. Hopefully people, like what we have to say or not like what we have to say. Either way, they're going to hear it.
I dig it, man. And we're going to drop part 1 and 2 of this podcast together on Monday. So there's going to be a 3-hour podcast drops on Monday sometime. I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 1, whenever Steve gets to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my friend, thank you for having me. We'll be in touch. And everybody, thanks for listening to the Cognitive Rampage with Vanilla Gorilla PD and the one, the only Adam Lowry. Hope I didn't steal your thunder.
I love it, dude, man. Love you. Later, man.
Bro. Have a good day.
You too.